See, here's the thing. I'm getting fired up now. Most people miss their moment because they're waiting for something bigger while they're neglecting what's already put in their hand. I was just reading this week about Michael Jordan, how he got cut from his own high school basketball team, but he didn't quit. Walt Disney got fired.
My old pastor used to say it, talked about failure as failing forward. If you learnt from it, then it's not a failure. If you didn't learn anything from it, then that's when it's a failure.
What's up, James? Good to be back.
Yeah, man. Let's launch straight into it, bro. Today, what are we talking about? We're talking about stewardship, faithfulness, and living in light of, the reality of Jesus one day cracking the sky and coming, and us being living into that eternal reality. Yeah.
That day is glorious, and Paul said to the church in in the book of Titus, he said, that's the blessed hope of the church, is his appearing. Can't wait.
Which is such a good perspective, because I think so many people, when they think of the return of Jesus, freak out. They're like, looking at like Left Behind and all those books and the movies and stuff, and go, I don't even want to think about that. But no, it's so good framing it that way, that it's actually like a hopeful reality. And
it's a love story, and it's everything that we're made for. And when we see it rightly, then it breeds hope in our hearts, And if we don't see it rightly, then we don't think about it at all. So it's so important that we see the events of the end times and his second coming rightly and biblically. And so what's really on my heart is just that we prepare a generation to first see it rightly, but then how do we live in light of that?
Yeah, that's good. Awesome, man. So, bro, kick us into it, man. So we're talking about sort of Matthew 24, Matthew 25. If you got a Bible at home, you're listening in, feel free to follow along. And we kind of, if you want a good reference for a deeper discussion around the return of the Lord, go back and listen to our conversation we had with Josh Yo recently. Also, a really good conversation we had a while back on the Sermon on the Mount, what Jesus laid out, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. But today we're kind of, diving in Matthew 24 and 25, faithfulness and stewardship.
Yeah.
Hope I laid it out correctly. Is that kind of the vein that we're going on?
Yeah, and we'll jump into the parable of the talents, but this conversation, Matthew 24 and 25, is critical for us to understand. It's actually Jesus, a couple of chapters, Matthew 24 and 25 go together, and Jesus is speaking to his disciples, answering a question that they had, actually a threefold question about the time of the end and his coming again. And he puts his I guess pastoral teaching hat on, and he unpacks the events that are coming, and then in verse 32 onwards through to the end of chapter 25, Matthew 24, 32 to the end of chapter 25, what he does is he takes the teacher's hat off and he puts the pastoral, or I guess the coach's hat on. He goes, here's how you live in light of the events pertaining to the end. And what he does, and this is genius Jesus. He unpacks 7 different metaphorical or parables as railway tracks for the battlegrounds of our heart, so that we live alive and love, waiting and longing for his return and prepared. And so these 7 parables are so important for us to understand, because Jesus doesn't want us just to understand that he's coming again. He wants us to, he's more interested, I guess, in who we become in light of his return. And so he unpacks, the first one is the fig tree. And really, this is the battleground of the heart for discerning the hour that we're living in. And it was about recognizing the season. And then he goes as it was in the days of Noah. And this is really a battle it's the battleground of the heart for conviction. I mean, you look at the life of Noah, what a legend, man. Like, got the craziest request in the whole Bible over his life, his family, and his generation, and built this boat, 100 years or so, for rain that had never come before. And he held the line on righteousness and warned of the judgment to come. I mean,
100 years is crazy.
I mean, just talk about holding the line on conviction. Just like Daniel, you alluded to Daniel before. 24, but he's another example of that. But really, the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. And so here's this man like carrying a conviction around a promise that was coming, and he put action to it. And so that's the battleground, another battleground of the heart. He talks about the thief in the night coming, which is really a battleground of the heart for just watchfulness and waiting and being alert. He talks about the faithful and the wise servant, this battle for a faithful generation. They'll be faithful. And then the parable of the 10 virgins, one of my favorites, about the 5 wise and the 5 foolish. And really, he's talking about a battleground of the heart for intimacy, to have a heart that flows with the oil of intimacy. And then the one we're going to talk about today, he talks about the parable of the talents, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's the battleground for stewardship. And that's really on my heart at the moment, is that we get a generation that will steward what God has given them. And have a right perspective of who he is, and then the last one is the sheep and the goats, which is really this battle for love. And so that's kind of the context of Matthew 24 and 25. And I think when you begin to see it through the lens of Jesus really wanting to prepare a generation for his coming, there's so much in there that gives us real railway tracks for how do we live now in light of his return.
I love how you've just given kind of the, what do they call it, the 30,000 foot perspective of what Jesus is actually saying, like zooming out, like it's actually one continual sermon, Matthew 24, 25. And a lot of people just read 24 and go, oh my gosh, all the events, all the freaky wars and rumors of wars. And they kind of stop there and that's all they get out of it. Versus what actually you've just communicated, what Jesus is really trying to drive across is, hey, I'm coming. Here's some of the events, how you can know that I'm coming, but here's how you have to live in light of my coming. And kind of what he's really wanting us to actually like get out of what he's trying to drill into us. I've kind of always seen, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong in my way of thinking about it, but each of those different parables or stories, whatever you want to call them, kind of seem to me as though they're communicating the same thing around faithfulness and like stewardship of our lives and the resources and the calling of God. Is that right? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm heretical in my thinking.
And ultimately, what does God want from us? I mean, that's a profound question to ask. Like, why am I on this rock? And you might be listening to this today thinking, like, what's my purpose? What's my calling in life? And ultimately, the answer to that question determines a lot of what we do in life and what we give our time and energy to. And when you look at, I was thinking about just this morning actually about the thief on the cross. Like, here's someone that didn't actually do a lot with his life. In fact, the adverse of what we thought he would have wanted, but at the end of it, he turned his heart. And what I've realized is what God wants is he just wants us. He wants us fully given to him in love and trusting him and living by faith and seeing him as he is, which the thief on the cross did at that last possible moment. And Jesus goes, okay, you can spend eternity with me. I mean, that's amazing. That provokes everything in me that thinks it's about what I can build for him and what I can do serving him and all this. But what he wants is our hearts. And this is what Jesus is bringing us into with all of these different things, is the inner world and the position of our hearts in light of who he is. Yeah.
That's good, man. Yeah, the thief on the cross is a interesting one, eh? Like right at the last minute it comes in, kind of bursts the bubble on a lot of our theology, eh? Like, what about, did he get baptized? Did he like rip him down off that cross, baptize him, chuck him back on it? Like,
it's so provoking because you think he never spent a day in church. He never paid a tithe. Like you said, didn't get baptized, and yet
didn't pray in tongues,
all of this stuff. And it just, what it does is it puts a wrecking ball through this whole idea that you have to, in the kingdom, climb this ladder of success to try to attain to some kind of high and lofty place in God,
Yeah.
And it just shows that it's about the heart. And here's this guy hanging on a bloody cross as a murderer, and the last possible moment turns his heart. And I read Bible stories. I mean, we talked about Noah, but you can talk about Paul the Apostle. Man, he was the New Testament version of Osama bin Laden or ISIS or some terrorist. And and yet Jesus chose him,
Yeah.
and he became the greatest apostle of all time. And most of what we read in our theology is written by an ex-terrorist, so to speak. So I just love that aspect of who God is that he can use anybody. And I think no heart is ever too far from the love of God. And his love is able to transform any heart in any place. It might be your darkest, most rebellious hour, but God can still soften any heart and turn it back to him.
That's good, man. So let's jump to the parable of the talents. Like you were saying, we want to zoom in a little bit. So just for anyone who's not fully aware of what that parable is, what it's saying, can you just give us a quick catch us up?
Yeah, so he's just given the parable of the 10 virgins, and this whole battleground for intimacy, and he's obviously, and when you look at these 7 different battlegrounds that I was talking about, each one gets more focused and hones in more on the internal workings of the heart than the last one. And so we get to this parable of the talents, and Jesus tells a story about this master who left on this journey, and he gives talents, and one gets 5, another one gets 2, and then one guy gets 1 talent. And the first 2 multiply what they were given, and the third guy that just got the 1 talent, he buried it. And the shocking thing about this parable is that it's not ultimately about the talent. It's about what the person did with the talent. It's about what they did with what God gave them. It's about stewardship. And so it's a profound parable. There's so much in it.
Why are we talking about it today, 2,000 years on? What context does it have for our reality? How does it apply in 2026?
Yeah, I think there's some principles in it that are so important for us to understand. The first is that God didn't, as the master, God didn't give each one of the guys the same measure. So they didn't all get 5 talents. One got 5, one got 2, and one got 1. And it says each according to his ability. That means that there is this tendency for people to enter into this trap of comparison, looking over the fence and going, how come he got 5 and I only got 2? And what we see here is that God, as the master who gives out these talents, is he's essentially saying right off the bat, is the kingdom of heaven, it's not graded on the size of your ability. So you're not successful because you got 5 more than the guy that got 2 or more than the guy that got 1.
Well, how much, talk about the actual cost of a talent. Like, so we're talking about literal money, not just like talents. God gave you a gift of this. Like the actual context is Jesus is handing these dudes some money, physical cash, assets, and saying, go and do diligently with it.
Yeah, and back in the day, it would have been a huge amount of money that we're talking about.
Yeah, because
even 1 talent was a huge amount of money.
Yeah, how much was it?
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but
wasn't it like a year's worth of wages?
Yeah, thousands and thousands of dollars. Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna. You carry on while I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, and so
I'm gonna chat this, baby.
You're gonna chat this, baby. I love that. But the interesting thing here is that what we find out in this parable is that the servant, the guy that got 2 talents, got the exact same reward as the guy that had 5 talents. And the reward was the affirmation of the master. Well done, good and faithful servant. Isn't that interesting? The affirmation of God over each of them, even though it was different amounts, the reward was the same.
All right, I got it here. You
got it.
All right, chat is telling me. So in the parable, 1 talent is the equivalent, not of a day's worth of wages, not even a year's worth of wages, 20 years worth of wages. So that's crazy. I've always heard that, like, the master gave him a little coin. Like, here you go, here's a little coin or a bag of like $2 coins, you know.
So we're talking millions.
We're talking a lot of, how much is 20 years worth of wages for 1 talent?
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
So
and then
half a lifetime of work.
2 talents, the guy with 2 talents had 40 years worth of wages, and the guy with 5 talents had 100 years worth of wages. That's a lot of money. Sorry. This is where my brain always goes with this. But how, like, what's the practicality of that?
That's a lot of money. And just going back to what I was talking about before, you found the value of it. Love that. But so the servant that had 2 talents, who multiplied it and doubled it, he got the exact same reward as the guy that had 5 talents and doubled it. And the reward was, well done, good and faithful servant. The reward wasn't, well done, impressive servant, or well done, hardworking servant, or well done, famous and rich servant. It was, well done, good and faithful servant. And I love that. And so the reward was the same. And so, I just love that the economy of God's kingdom and his reward system isn't based on how much you have, how much talent, how much passion you have, or how much fame or a skill or intellectual ability or whatever it is. It's based on our heart posture in him and what we do with what we've been given. Yeah,
that's awesome. So sorry, that was $1.2 million to $1.5 million per talent.
It's huge.
So the guy with lots was like 7 mil. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. But even the guy with 1 talent, there's a lot of money.
Yeah, he's not like a ragtag, like lowly servant. I think we've always...
He's not living on the street.
Nah. Like, that's how I've always read it. The master just brought him in from the veggie garden. Yeah. All right, mate, here's $5. Go and do something with it.
That's right.
I'm going to bury it.
But the guy with the 5 and the guy with the 2, what I see here is that they did something with what was in their hand.
Yeah.
And they it's not like they were waiting for more before they did something. And I think sometimes I see a lot of young people it's like, oh, one day I will step out and do something, for the Lord. One day I'll move to this country, or one day I'll start that business, or one day I'll become a doctor, or one day. But
when all the ducks have lined up, everything's worked,
So that they weren't waiting for more. Also, they didn't complain about what they didn't have.
Yeah.
And they what they did is they took the 5, took the 2, and as you said, it's a lot of money still, but they used what they had rather than waiting for more to take that step. And
so what does that look like today?
And I think just before I go into that,
yeah,
I think what it reminds me of is the parable of the mustard seed, or the principle of the mustard seed, I should say, which is, if you look at a mustard seed, it's tiny. It is so small. And what Jesus was saying through this principle of the mustard seed is that in the kingdom, oftentimes things start really small. And the question today that I really want to ask, and I'm asking myself, is what's in your hand? It might seem really small in terms of the big picture of the world and God's purposes, but when you look at the scriptures, in the stories in the Gospels, it's usually that the most profound things start small, and just a mustard seed, so to speak, whether it's a lunchbox with 5 loaves and 2 fish, whether it's a sling in the hand of David up against Goliath, whether it's just 120 guys in a small upper room waiting for some promise, whether it's just the 12 disciples up against the whole Roman Empire who are gripped with just the beauty of who Jesus was. The principle is the same, is that it always starts small. Jesus himself, born in a manger in a tiny little place called Bethlehem. What good could come out of that place, And but what we understand in the kingdom is that often the most profound and potent things are usually starting in small tin sheds, so to speak.
Yeah. So good. Like, nothing is just always... it's interesting. There's that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders, and Atomic Habits, those different books, and they all say the same thing. No one who's ever done great achievements in life has ever gotten there from 1 or 2 big decisions. It's always atomic habits and atomic decisions, little decisions, each day to wake up and make your bed, get up and brush your teeth and look after yourself, go to the gym, or
just keep
get in the Word, turning up.
Man, I was just reading this week about Michael Jordan, how he got cut from his own high school basketball team.
Really?
But he didn't quit, and he just kept turning up, and he kept practicing, and obviously we know the rest is history, the GOAT,
Which is wild, because I think in our school system, you look at how the schooling system, education system, predominantly in the West and in most places, is set up that you're basically taught from day dot, you can't get it wrong. You get this test wrong, you're out.
Walt Disney got fired. And so you look at anyone that's been successful, usually it will start.
They're always out of the box characters. You just think differently. You don't conform to the common systems of the world. But that whole point on like education, like I think Jesus is breaking our mold in this, that like you just have to sow the seed. Like the thing that frustrated the master was you did nothing. You sat on the sideline idly. You put it in the ground. You could have at least put it in the bank and then built interest off it, and it compounded over time, but you decided to bury it. I mean, what does it look like to bury your talent?
See, here's the thing. I'm getting fired up now.
Come on, release.
Most people miss their moment because they're waiting for something bigger while they're neglecting what's already put in their hand. And I've seen it time and time again. I'm just like, man, just take the next step. It might seem like a half a step, but when God breathes on it, whew. See, God's not so impressed by big. He's impressed by faithful.
Yeah.
And sometimes faithful looks like just taking a tiny step. Sometimes faithful is just turning up. Sometimes faithful is just standing your ground when everything in you wants to quit. And just going, I refuse to quit. I'm going to hold the line. And so I think when we look at this third servant who had one talent, the issue was, it wasn't that he was weak, or it wasn't even that he had less than the others. The issue in his heart was this issue of passivity. And there was obviously a broken God image there too. He viewed the master as someone who was very harsh and like a hard taskmaster. And I think he had a faulty foundation of who God was, of who the master was, which made him just bury the talent. He just buried the potential. He buried everything in the ground just because of his wrong God view.
Wow.
Sad.
So you're saying that most of our decisions and our actions are framed by our belief system about who we believe God to be.
Yeah. Is he good or is he not? And the answer to that question determines whether you live in fear or you live in love. And when you live in fear, you'll always shrink back. You'll bury the talent. You'll end up doom scrolling. You'll end up just doing nothing, sitting on the couch, wishing for another day, hoping that something would shift or change, instead of just taking a small step with what's in your hand. And I think that's one of the greatest temptations in this generation, is just to sit back in passivity because of a broken God image, living in fear, shrinking back, and bearing callings, bearing gifts, bearing vision, even bearing dreams, responsibility, bearing conviction. And it's not so much through rebellion, although it could be. But it's a fear-based thing that causes distraction. It causes comparison. It causes all kinds, like living in comfort. And God doesn't want us to stay there. He actually wants us to move forward. Faith requires action, otherwise it's dead. And so I'm provoked by this parable.
So talk about failure then. For those, I mean, that's often the biggest hindrance, right? We overthink things and we think through all the worst case scenarios. What about the genuine reality of failing? How do we deal with that? Say, someone's listening in and they're going, but I did try, I did step out and I got it wrong and it backfired, and whatever the situation was, I invested or I gave, my time to build this thing for the kingdom and it didn't go the way that I'd planned. How do you deal with that? And even the disappointment, discouragement, or the anxiety built around that, even sometimes for some people, trauma.
Yeah, I think what we do with failure is huge, and how we understand it. I look at, probably a really good example, at least in the Bible, is the life of Peter. And you look at Peter versus Judas, and here's Peter. He went to quit. John 21, he's going fishing, and all the other guys are going with him because he's got such a leadership call on his life. They're like, well, we'll come too. And they're not just going for a Sunday afternoon fish to see if they can catch a massive big fish. They're actually going back to Peter is going, he's quitting. He's taken a massive stumble here. He's denied Jesus, and he's going out fishing. And it's not to, like I said, to go have a bit of fun. He's actually trying to find this place of security in his life where he can live comfortably, maybe still reach for the kingdom, but not have to give my whole life to it. And I love how Jesus restores him. Hey, Peter, do you love me more than these? Do you love me? Do you love me? And calls him again to follow him wholeheartedly. And I think the bottom line with failure is do we see God as good ultimately, or do we not? And what we do with failure is determined by the answer to that question. And in this parable, to tie it back into this parable, the guy with one talent, he viewed the master as a hard man. And I think if you think God is harsh, you'll hide, you'll shrink back. And when you fail, you'll live in fear and disappointment, discouragement. If you think God is impossible to please, you'll shrink back, you'll live in fear and discouragement, disappointment. But when you see God as good and the God of abundance and the God that's with us and the God that cares more than we know that he cares, or more than we think that he cares, here's what you do when you know that God is unconditional in his love. Even in your most darkest moment of failure, here's what you'll still be willing to do. You'll still be willing to take another risk. You'll still be willing to build again. You'll still be willing to go again. You'll still be willing to plant that seed again. You'll still be willing to try to multiply what God has done by just taking that next step. And it's like, I as a dad, I've got 3 kids, and all of them, they all fail. I fail all the time. But what we've learned in the culture that we have in our family is that you try your best, and sometimes your best kind of doesn't make the cut, and you just sort of fall flat on your face, flat on your face. And what happens is we just say in our family, you just got to get back up again. And I remember when my son was learning to walk, and I was when a kid can learn to walk, it's one of the best days in the life of a dad. And I was like, come to dada. And finally he takes one like tiny little step, and he falls flat on his face, and he's like crying. And so I go over, I'm like, yes, because he took like half a step, and then he stumbled and he fell. But as a dad, I'm watching him, and I'm going, yes, he did it. And I'm like, come on, get up, you're okay, you can do it again. I'm with you, I'm right here, come to dada. And then he takes the next step, and then the next step. And just as a dad, I'm not so much looking at him falling down and going, nah, you shouldn't have fallen, why did you take that step like that? No, I'm rejoicing in the half a step that he made, and I'm like, get back up again and give it another crack. Because I think we have to understand as a generation that God is with us, and that he really, really cares about us, about who we are in him and who we're becoming in him.
I love that you use that example of kids taking those steps, because no father out there, no good father at least, is ever going to go, you failed, son, do better. What do? We take steps, we fall, we learn, we get back up. And I think that that's the biggest thing when you push the idea of failure is wrong. It's wrong to fail. Like the whole way we learn, how do we learn that, the stovetop is hot? By touching it. Our parents all said it, don't touch the stovetop, you can get burnt. But what did we do? We touched the stovetop. What did we do? We learnt from that. Oh, the stovetop's hot. Ow, I don't like that. And I love, my old pastor used to say it, talked about failure as failing forward.
Yeah.
And he would say, if you learnt from it, then it's not a failure.
Yeah.
If you didn't learn anything from it, you weren't able to actually evaluate from your failing, getting it wrong, the thing not going the way that you intended or hoped for, then that's when it's a failure. And I think that that's just how our wiring of our brain, that's how we learn, is by getting things wrong. You look at anyone who's done anything in life and you ask them, I encourage you listening in today, talk to someone who you can look at and go, oh, they've done some cool stuff in life. Ask them, when did you fail in your life? And I'm sure they'll tell you some pretty good stories, and how they grew from that, and the wisdom that was gained from it.
Man, I'm telling you, when I moved to this city, I was 22 years old and I knew hardly anything. Didn't have a prayer life, hardly knew the Bible, didn't know how to talk in front of people. In fact, I had so much fear of man, so much insecurity, and my self-image was so low. And it's just amazing. Like when I look back, that was 22 years ago. And I look back over a couple of decades, how it's actually taken me a while to learn some lessons. And I would just say to anyone listening today, you got to be patient and just don't beat yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself. You've already got an enemy that hates you. You don't need another enemy. Don't be your own, don't do the devil's job for him. Understand that you have a God, a Father in heaven who loves you so much, so unconditionally, and he's with you. His eye is on you. And just those tiny little steps, especially in failure and weakness, I tell you what, the delight in his heart. In Zechariah chapter 4, it actually says, do not despise the day of small beginnings, for the Lord delights when a work begins. And sometimes a work beginning looks like a half a step forward, or like just a few centimeters. But I tell you what, there's something in the heart of God, in the economy of heaven, that just loves someone that takes something small with a desire to see it multiply and grow. No matter how small it is, no matter how obscure it seems, under the radar, there's a principle in the kingdom of God that we've got to catch today that has to do with small beginnings and using what God has put in our hands. So you might be an artist, you might have a passion for content creation. You might have a passion for medicine. You might have a passion for nations, or you might want to get into law or be a teacher or whatever it is. Don't wait for some day when magically it's just going to appear. Start with what you've got today, and you watch God breathe on it. And in the meantime, over the years, don't measure your success in a month or two, but measure it over the years and watch what God does with the small acts of obedience. And
the power of compound growth, right?
Yeah, exactly, that's it.
Over time, compounding, little by little by little by little. What do they say? Like a dripping, a drip of water can wear away rock, but over, long time. And that's it in life, isn't it? Is you just got to chip away and keep stepping out.
And here's just one thing real quick on this is one of the things you really got to watch, and what I've had to battle in my heart, is this thing of envy and comparison.
Yeah.
And because it'll destroy you. When you look over the fence and you look at the 5-talent person and you go, how come they got way more and I didn't get this? Or how come they're this or that? When you think that your lot is not fair, man, that you just watch that thing of envy, because envy is the subtle distress, that emotion in your heart that is distressed when someone else has more or is more successful. You can't afford to in your heart. It's a cancer that it will destroy you. Or it's that little leap of joy in your heart when someone fails. So if you're the 5-talent guy and the 1-talent guy fails, don't rejoice over that. You can't afford to. And I think it's Psalm 73, verse 24 and 25, where David says, whom have I in heaven but you? There is none on the earth that I desire aside from you. Lord, of my heart and my flesh, they fail me. You are the strength of my life, and you are my portion forever. And I think that's this is the thing, this parable of the talents. Like, we've got to understand, just settle the issue today before this podcast finishes, even in your own heart. You have to settle the issue that Jesus is your great reward. And that's the bottom line of this parable, is the reward wasn't the amount that they recouped back. It wasn't even the size of the growth. That's not the reward. The reward was, well done, good and faithful servant. The reward was him. The reward the reward is Jesus. He himself is the great prize of all of the ages. The wealth of the human heart is God, and he's the one that we want at the end of the day anyway. Whether you live in a mansion or you live in a mud hut, it doesn't matter. That settle the issue today, that he's the one that we want, and he's the one that we're living for. Yeah.
He who is faithful with little will be entrusted with much.
Exactly.
It's so true, isn't it? So what was that like for you, starting off in YWAM and leadership? I don't know if you want to go there with the time that we got, but where you first began, if you can think back to your day of small beginnings until now, what have been the biggest lessons you've learned through that? Even through, I don't know, if you're open to sharing some failures that you learned from, or just a lesson, some wisdom gained.
Oh man, I remember so many times I'd get up to share vision and just stumbling over my words. And I remember so many times just thinking, I should have said that better or done that better. Should have been more organized. Administration's not my highest gift, James. But there's so many times I beat myself up just to think, I should have been better prepared, or I should have done this, or I should have done that. But I look back and I go, man, I've come a long way in 2 decades, and I've realized it's more about what God's done in my heart than actually through the externals of the ministry. We started so small. We literally started in a kiwifruit packing shed, and we were praying every day in there, and we had all of this vision, but we didn't know how to get there except just turn up and keep praying. And then one thing, God's a way better leader than we are followers, and I think what I've learned is to build a track record of friendship with Him, especially in weakness, especially in failure, but just taking those next steps is probably the thing that I've learned the most. Is that if you don't quit, you truly win in the kingdom. You just hold the line. If you're Noah, you just keep swinging the axe. If you're Daniel, you just hold the line on righteousness. You just refuse to bow to the spirit of this age that wants you to live adverse to what the parable of the talents is talking about, where it does want you to climb this ladder of success, where the reward is actually the amounts and the growth and all of that. And the kingdom is about increase and it is about growth, but we've got to understand that He's the reward. Yeah. And
so good.
There's nothing like when you fail. There's times where I remember after giving a message or teaching a class, I remember multiple times just thinking, I was just beating myself up. Man, I just got that wrong, or I can't believe I said it that way, or man, I totally missed the boat on that. And I remember the Lord rebuking me once actually, and he's like, Josh, you can't afford to beat yourself up. And He says, how about asking me about how you did? And I had this moment of like, oh yeah, what's His evaluation of my step of faith, because we've got to learn to see things the way that He sees it. Yeah. It's usually different to the way that we see it. And so that really helped me. So anytime I do anything in the kingdom now, I'm always just dialoguing with the Lord. Lord, what do you think about what I did? Wow. And just inviting Him into that process rather than just beating yourself up.
Yeah. That's such a positive way of thinking about it. I remember even hearing, I went through a season in my life of really struggling with my thought life, real negative thought patterns. And I remember seeing this strategy this person used. It was just a reel I saw, and he was just saying when he was struggling with some ugly thinking as well, he would send a voice message to himself as though he was speaking to a friend. And because you're always so much nicer to other people than you are to yourself, right? At least I noticed that. Like sometimes the language I use to speaking with someone else, going through exactly the same situation that I found myself walking through, I'm way nicer. And so for me, I had to reset my thinking by just picking up my phone. Hey, bro, I noticed, I know that you failed. Thanks for sharing about this. I know that was really hard, and what you did was wrong, whatever. But bro, you got this, man. And I know that sounds so cliche and thinking back to it, but just doing that just rewired little by little my thought life. Oh yeah, actually I got some real stinking thinking here. What does the Father say about that? And as I began and then I would have to listen back to it, and it was like the Father speaking prophetically to my heart. Like, I see you, I love you, you've got this, get back up.
Come on.
And I don't know how many times
good.
You can hear the same kind of message. It can sound a little cliche, but this has been so good, man. I think so important, especially I talk with a lot of young people, where do you feel like God is leading you in your life? What steps are you taking right now to get you in that direction? And a lot of the time it's just I don't know what I'm doing. There's too many decisions. I'm so anxious. And so they sit on the sideline not doing anything. And it's like, man, come on. And I get it. There's a unique time of human history to be alive right now. There's so much going on. But I hope that this conversation's been helpful and encouraging. Is there any last thoughts you want to share, bro, just before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just, as you're sharing, bro, it's so important, these principles in the kingdom, that we understand these. And I really feel there's people listening that you're in this space of almost being, there's a temptation to bury what God has given you, and you're kind of waiting for some moment of some kind of breakthrough before you take the next step. But what I want to just challenge you with today is just take that step. Just make a small decision today. Maybe you've got ideas. Maybe there's a calling over your life. Maybe there's ideas around businesses that you want to start, or a ministry that you want to start or be a part of. Maybe a prayer life that you're desiring to grow in. Maybe to grow in the Word of God, or maybe there's a relationship. Maybe there's a girl or a guy. But maybe there's leadership anointings or giftings on your life. Maybe there's been promises that have been prayed over you, or desires that God has given you in your heart, and you've been sitting on those, and maybe some of you have already buried them, actually. And what I just would say to you is don't let the dream die. If God's given it to you, I want to ask you this question that I started this podcast with: is what is in your hand, and would you use it for the increase of His kingdom in this day? Because He truly is coming again. He will split the sky. The Son of God, the Son of Man, the Son of God, the Son of David. He is coming again. And every eye will see Him. Every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that He is the Lord. He's coming again. And I just want to challenge you. What is in your hand? What has God given you? You might be a teenager, and you're like, who am I to think that I could do anything significant for God? But I want to say, you take that mustard seed that God has given you, and you just take the next step, and you watch the miracle happen, because the miracle's in the seed. The miracle is already in the seed. The root system, the trunk, the branches, and even the fruit for a future day is in that tiny little seed. But if you do nothing with that seed, then the miracle can't happen. I think oftentimes the greatest miracles that we see is when people step out in simple faith and simple obedience. And so I want to encourage you today, just take that next step. Just make that phone call, have that conversation, write down that plan, call somebody, do something. Just take that next step today, and you watch what God does when He breathes on it.
Wow, Coach Cole, I feel like this is your final destiny right here.
And the worst thing is doing nothing with what God gave you.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing, to do nothing. That's the point of this whole idea, is take what God's given you and just let your steps of obedience, let it multiply, let God's kingdom and let His glory come, because it will. He's faithful to His word. There's not one thing that God has said that won't come to pass. Everything that He promised, everything He said, all of those dreams that He's put in your heart, it will come to pass. It's just whether you want it to take 50 years or maybe 5.
Next time, I'm gonna get you a whistle for your ultimate coach destiny,
and we'll blow it to end the podcast.
like blowing the shofar. No,
Hey,
it's good.
It's been great talking to you.
Thanks, bro, for coming on, man. Yeah. So appreciate you, dude. And thank you guys for listening in, and hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, like, and share, and all of that stuff. Till next time, bless you guys. Ka kite.